The Intelligence and Armed Services Committees of the U.S. Senate appear to be stepping up their efforts to uncover any secret government programs that may exist to study devices or manufactured material of non-human origin, as reported in Douglas Dean Johnson's article that dropped on June 21st, titled, Senate Committees Advancing New Language Seeking Possible Secret UFO Tech Programs. And I quote from his article, on June 14, 2023, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, SSCI, approved an Intelligence Authorization Act, IAA, for fiscal year 2024 that contains UAP-related language proposed by Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Democrat of New York, who apparently expects to win approval of compatible language in the Senate Armed Services Committee within days. Gillibrand sits on both committees. Further in the article, the texts of Gillibrand's amendments have not yet been made public, but she revealed her general intent in an interview with Matt Laslo of Wired, published on June 13, 2023. Laslo reported that the senator intended to seek approval in the fiscal year 2024 National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, of a, quote, mandate that no money can be spent on SAPs, special access programs, unless it's been reported to Congress. Later, Douglas writes, Laslo's article quoted Gillibrand as saying, quote, so if there are SAPs out there that are somehow outside of the normal chain of command and outside the normal appropriations process, they have to divulge that to Congress, unquote. She also said, quote, we need to just look into whether there are rogue SAP programs that no one is providing oversight for. The goal for me will be to have a hearing on that at some point so that we can assess if these SAPs actually exist, unquote. Another segment by Douglas. On June 14th, SSCI Chairman Senator Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia, and Rank Minority Member Senator Marco Rubio, Republican of Florida, issued a release announcing that the SSCI had approved the fiscal year 2024 Intelligence Authorization Act in a closed-door session earlier that day. A summary describing provisions of the bill include this bullet point, quote, increases transparency by strengthening unidentified aerial phenomena, funding, and reporting requirements, unquote. The final segment I'll share from his excellent article that's linked in the description, and here is the citation. Senator Gillibrand chairs the Emerging Threats and Capabilities Subcommittee of the Armed Services Committee. In her remarks to Laslo of Wired, she said she wanted to, quote, have a hearing at some point so that we can assess if these SAPs actually exist, unquote. Asked by Laslo whether she thought there was veracity to Grush's claims, Gillibrand said, quote, I have no idea. So I'm going to do the work and analyze it and figure it out, unquote. Regarding what Senator Gillibrand stated in reference to Grush's claims, I think that was the right answer. There is no good reason for her to say that he's 100% telling the truth or even likely telling the truth. The fact of the matter is that the U.S. Congress must initiate an aggressive investigation into the allegations made by Grush. And when that investigation reaches a conclusion, the American public must be made aware of their findings. In that spirit, I wrote this on Twitter on June 21st. Some skeptical arguments are highly biased and reaching because the motivation is to downplay the escalation with the UFO topic. The longer David Grush isn't in jail or fined for having lied under oath to congressional committees, the more I begin to believe his reporting is accurate. At any moment, the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, and the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, could make a joint public unequivocal statement that what Grush asserted is false. I expect that to happen if he's lying or mistaken after a thorough investigation has been completed by the U.S. Congress. Since the fallout of Grush's statements is the fueling of conspiracy theories and distrust in government institutions, the media will continue to cover Grush's statements and those backing him up. After all, be wary of desperate arguments. as to why no official denial happens at the level of DNI and Secretary of Defense if they do not happen months from now. When skeptical arguments are deficient, they shouldn't be given a pass just because they come from a skeptical viewpoint. As Ross Coulthart has stated multiple times, David Grush just wants what he asserted to be tested. The next few weeks and months will be incredibly fascinating. I will keep an open mind in both directions. I recommend you do the same. On April 4th, 2023, Liberation Times reported that members of Congress were planning public hearings on UAP and that multiple congressional committees may be involved. So, it's not only the Senate that is preparing new hearings, but the House is currently in the throes of preparing new UFO hearings as well. Washington correspondent for News Nation tweeted the following on June 21st. New. Congressional Republican tells @News Nation the upcoming House oversight hearing planned on UFO UAP reports will likely be a bipartisan-led field hearing in Florida sometime at the end of July. This plan is still up in the air, not finalized. Important caveat. On June 20th, 2023, Ezra Klein of the New York Times interviewed Leslie Kean, who authored along with Ralph Blumenthal the David Grush expose that published on thedebrief.org, titled, Intelligence Officials Say U.S. Has Retrieved Craft of Non-Human Origin. Here is an excerpt from this interview that lays out why Leslie Kean gives weight to David Grush's story. After I share this segment from the interview, I want to give you my commentary.
So I know this goes a bit beyond the story, but, as I mentioned, I have some real points of pretty deep skepticism here. And on the other hand, it is strange to me and curious and intriguing that you have a series of people serving on this task force who are coming to this task force, as I understand it, from different directions. I mean, my understanding is that Nell and Grush and Elizondo and so on don't all know each other from 30 years back, that they kind of end up here together. And they're all hearing something from someone who they find credible, such that they believe this is happening. I mean, maybe you know more than you can say or something, and I think you believe this is at least plausible enough that you're reporting it. So given the points of skepticism that you take as serious, what do you think is going on here? Like, what's your mental model of what you're hearing, and who is coming to them that isn't just coming forward, or why are they working through Dave Grush? Like, how do you understand what you're reporting here?
Well, I would say, first of all, it's not just that they're hearing something from someone, but they're hearing the same thing from multiple people with high clearances who have shown them and convinced them through whatever means they can, and sometimes this is through documentation, that they have this knowledge and that they have direct knowledge that they've been involved with these programs. And, you have to trust the ability of these task force members and others who know of this and haven't talked about it publicly to make that discernment, to say, well, enough people are telling me this, and I have enough documentation that I've seen that I take it seriously. And all we really have to rely on here is the credibility of the people who are giving us the information. That's all we have right now. So yes, I can understand skepticism. It's different when you're in a position like I am of having talked to them myself for so long and to having talked to so many other people with the same kind of information that Grush has. So that's partly what convinces me. I can't bring a lot of it forward, but I think in terms of how to think about it is, spending a few years talking to very high-level people because he is so trusted by them. And some of them come forward to him and talk about illegal activities that they're concerned about. And enough of them do that he builds up hundreds of pages of testimony about what he's learned from them and takes it to Congress. So, you're either going to accept that, well, maybe there's some truth to that, or you're not. And as I said, I think it's just the beginning. But that's how I frame it. I think there's enough people that he has spoken to that it gives it a lot of weight.
I want to reiterate a component of what Leslie Kean stated in response to Ezra Klein. Quote, I think in terms of how to think about it is spending a few years talking to very high-level people because he is so trusted by them. And some of them come forward to talk to him and talk about illegal activities that they're concerned about. And enough of them do that he builds up hundreds of pages of testimony about what he's learned from them and takes it to Congress. Well, before I get into this, what I was going to get into, I'll just say that it's reported that David Grush provided 11 hours of oral testimony to congressional staffers, which was then transcribed into hundreds of pages. Leslie Kean didn't get to see that because it's classified, but the congressional committees did get to see that classified information. And here's an excerpt from the original article that I cited earlier, that broke this story by Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal on the debrief.org. I'm going to read that citation because it factors into what Leslie Kean just stated in this interview to Ezra Klein. And I quote, Grush's investigation was centered on extensive interviews with high-level intelligence officials, some of whom are directly involved with the program. That's the crash retrieval program. He says the operation was illegally shielded from proper congressional oversight and that he was targeted and harassed because of his investigation. Grush said that the craft recovery operations are ongoing at various levels of activity and that he knows the specific individuals, current and former, who are involved. Quote, individuals on these UAP programs approached me in my official capacity and disclosed their concerns regarding a multitude of wrongdoings, such as illegal contracting against the federal acquisition regulations and other criminality and the suppression of information across a qualified industrial base and academia, unquote, he stated. So bear in mind that David Grush engaged in this investigation over a 4-year period. And as I perceive it, it took that amount of time for him to have ironclad certainty or extremely high confidence that what he's saying is true, to the point where he put his reputation on the line professionally, personally, and his safety on the line. And his finances have obviously taken a hit by leaving such a, what I would assume is a pretty lucrative job. I mean, he worked for the NGA, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and he left in April of 2023, right? He just left. I'm sure they paid him well. I think he was a GS 15 ranking, if my memory serves, which is like equivalent to a colonel. I'm sure he was getting paid pretty well. But anyways, this is from the original article. The whistleblower David Charles Grush, 36, a decorated former combat officer in Afghanistan, is a veteran of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA, and the National Reconnaissance Office, NRO. He served as the Reconnaissance Office's representative to the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force from 2019 to 2021. From late 2021 to July 2022, he was the NGA's, that's the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency's, co-lead for UAP analysis and its representative to the task force. So yes, part of his responsibilities was reporting to the task force, but as I understand it, that wasn't his job. He was an employee with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and was representing the NGA for the task force, if you will, from what I understand, because the task force wanted to learn whether there were hidden UFO programs that were not being shared with the task force. Recall, the task force was implemented by the United States Congress, who wrote all that legislation to get to the bottom of the UFO enigma. What does the government know? Well, through these official instigations, if you will, David Grush acted on their behalf, and through his investigations, he discovered some pretty alarming things. And what he discovered, he revealed very recently on that News Nation interview with Ross Coulthart. Anyways, to add greater clarity to at least partially how he implemented this investigation, here's a tweet by Joe Murgia that brings some clarity, and I'm going to read it. A few folks question how David Grush had the authority to put people under oath during his investigation. I was also curious, so I asked Jeremy Corbell if he could clarify that part. From Coast to Coast AM Saturday night. Longer transcript than the original tweet. Corbell: Grush started putting people under oath, and he started putting them under oath in the classified setting, where they had to tell the answer. Reluctantly, people did. The clarification from Corbell: that was my mistake for how I characterized that. David didn't put interview subjects under oath personally to do their protected disclosures. That was the ICIG, that is the Intelligence Community Inspector General's staff, who did that when they interviewed the many direct witnesses and program participants based on Dave's findings. Quote, they needed independent corroborative testimony for the ICIG complaint to be validated, vetted, and verified. On June 14th, Michael Shermer interviewed Mike Schellenberger, and Mike Schellenberger wrote a really important piece recently in his publication called The Public on Substack. And in the following segment, Michael Shermer asks Michael Schellenberger about the nature of the witnesses he talked to. I'll give my analysis afterwards.
I mean, any of the people you talked to, did any of them say, I myself saw it, or were they all, I know somebody that saw the craft or whatever?
No. There were people that had seen them.
Okay.
And I think I hope that some of them will.
That's big.
Speak,
that's big. That's
there's
huge.
a chance that some of them will speak publicly at some point, but we'll see.
I mean,
yeah.
Go on Rogan. I mean, if the New York Times will cover it, Joe will talk to anybody, and he's got the biggest platform on the planet. So come on.
Absolutely.
We'll support you. We want to know.
Yeah.
Here's another excerpt from Ezra Klein's interview with Leslie Kean. And this excerpt will help give greater clarity, potentially, to the video clip that I just shared with you from Michael Shermer's podcast. Ezra Klein states, so there's another oddity to this to me, because as you say, there's been for a long time stories that this has all been recovered and that the government has it in possession, and sort of Grush and some of the other people named here are basically saying, listen, people who are involved in this are coming to tell us about it. So on the one hand, this thing is really not that secret, right? And people seem to want to talk about it, who have firsthand knowledge of it. But why don't any of the people that have firsthand knowledge of it then come out? If they're very concerned, right? And they'd be very credible, because they could say, look, I was in the room and I saw the thing, and there are these whistleblower protections. What's your theory of why they're working through somebody like Grush? Leslie Kean responds, well, I think that they don't feel safe coming out at this point. Now, that could change, and I think that that's what we're all hoping will change once Congress, because Congress can talk to these people, and maybe they will be safe, feel safe coming out. But as it stands so far, as I understand it, they don't want their names out in the public domain. They may be working in jobs. I know of one person who has actually spoken to Congress. He was in one of these programs for a short time, and his current employer has made it clear that they don't want him talking about this. There are various risks that people take for coming forward, especially if they're still in government. And so for whatever reasons, each one of them has their own reasons for being willing to talk to Congress, but they are not willing to go public. Now, I think that's going to change, Ezra, as time goes on. And I also think if Congress holds a hearing, they may call some of these people, and they may not have a choice. But if they can talk under oath in a protected environment in which they are free to say what they want without facing reprisals, that could change everything. Also, because of the reprisals and harassment that Grush faced over the year, I think a lot of these people are afraid of that happening to them. It's complicated why they don't come forward, but they all have their own reasons for it. Here are two final quotes I want to share with you as we wrap this video up. The following is from the Dean Johnson article that I shared earlier. Quote, the allegations themselves are breathtaking, unquote, Senator Brian Schatz, Democrat of Hawaii. A member of the Senate Appropriations Defense Subcommittee told Wired's Laszlo, quote, it could be a game changer, or it could be a crank, unquote. This one is from Ezra Klein's interview with Leslie Kean. Leslie stated, I mean, maybe after this is investigated, it will come to light that none of it is true. I mean, we don't have the proof. The investigation that needs to be done, at least a public investigation, has not happened yet. And it is hard to come to terms with this. I hear what you're saying, so I just want to see more investigation happen. And I wanted to help Grush come forward because I think he opens a door to possibly others coming forward and for us to learn more about what this is all about. I am very cognizant of the letter that reveals Canadian politicians' concern of covert UFO programs involving Canada and Five Eyes Alliance. I will cover that probably in my next video. That will take a little bit more digging than this video, it could be argued. So I'm inclined to think that the hen has come home to roost, or whatever that saying is. It's late at night. If we are going to get UFO disclosure, it's now or never, in my opinion. And I know that's going to upset some people, but look, I'm entitled to my opinion. You're entitled to your opinion. If we're going to get disclosure, if there is a there, if some UFOs do represent non-human intelligence, and there are legacy UFO programs within the U.S. government, then that's coming out within close proximity to the now because of all the pressure. If it turns out that none of this is true, and then this is all some kind of quote-unquote mass hysteria, well, then that's the way it goes, although I doubt that's going to be the case. Thank you so much for watching. And please do not forget to subscribe. If you'd like to support this channel, you can check out my merch shop where I sell t-shirts. You could become a patron. You could become a YouTube member. You can give me a one-time donation. All those potentialities can be accessed in the description below, or you can just slap a like on this bad boy and I'll appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Whew, it's so late at night right now. I really exerted myself. If you're still watching, how about you put in the comment box below the word night, so that I know that you got to this point and I can feel all warm and fuzzy inside. See you in the next episode. Special thanks to all patrons, YouTube members, those that have bought merch, those that have given me a one-time donation. I couldn't do without you. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.